The conflict in the Middle East is rapidly expanding, now entering its third day. On Saturday, a dramatic strike by US and Israeli forces targeted Iran, resulting in the death of the nation's supreme leader, along with hundreds of Iranian citizens. Iran has retaliated fiercely, directing attacks across the broader region. Actions that Gulf states and the United States have condemned as reckless and indiscriminate. British interests have also come under fire, with a drone strike hitting a British RAF base in Cyprus overnight. This was followed by a second attack this morning, where 2 unmanned drones en route to the base were successfully intercepted. Neil Connery reports on these developments. This war's reach is spreading swiftly. Overnight in Lebanon, Israeli forces mounted a counterattack after Hezbollah launched attacks. The Lebanese Health Ministry has reported at least 31 fatalities amid growing chaos. Roads leading out of Beirut were heavily congested as residents scrambled to flee the capital. Eyewitnesses described an initial series of 3 explosions, followed about 10 minutes later by another strike nearby, prompting everyone to scatter. Israel maintains that its response was provoked by Hezbollah firing missiles at the city of Haifa. An Israeli Defense Forces spokesman declared that Hezbollah's assault was deliberate, emphasizing the group's awareness of the consequences. They knew what they were doing, he said, cautioning that all options are on the table and promising a heavy price for the attacks. In Tehran, more footage has surfaced, showing the devastating effects of the U.S.-Israeli campaign. Billowing plumes of smoke rise dramatically above the Iranian capital as additional bombs detonate, amplifying the conflict's toll. Israel claims that over 100 fighter jets participated in an intense wave of overnight airstrikes. Iranian officials have released images purportedly showing casualties from the most recent attacks. Meanwhile, in Cyprus, sirens blared this morning at the RAF Akrotiri base, where fighter jets were deployed after 2 drones heading toward the UK installation were intercepted. An Iranian drone had crashed at the site the previous night, causing only minor material damage. Britain's Prime Minister announced that the UK has consented to a US request to use British military bases as launching points for defensive strikes targeting Iranian missile sites. Iran appears to be employing a scorched earth policy, prompting the UK to support collective self-defense for its allies and citizens in the region. Adding complexity, in Kuwait, friendly fire incidents occurred when Kuwaiti air defenses accidentally downed 3 U.S. fighter jets. Fortunately, all crew members were safely recovered. As Iran continues its offensive against Gulf neighbors following multiple strikes over the weekend, it is estimated that around 300,000 British nationals remain in the region, many of whom face increasing danger. Neil Connery, ITV News. It has now been just over 48 hours since the conflict erupted. We turn to our international editor, Emma Murphy, reporting from Erbil in Iraq, for insight. Emma, how do you assess the current escalation? Well, Nina, reflecting back on our past conversations over recent weeks and months, the threat of this situation escalating has loomed large. The concerns were clear. If a certain strike occurred, the conflict could spiral. Sadly, we've witnessed exactly that. The initial strike has expanded into a full-scale war, steadily drawing in more parties and amplifying regional tensions with no end in sight yet. The conflict is escalating rapidly, impacting more nations and affecting an increasing number of people day by day. Today has demonstrated the very real risk of further expansion and escalation. The strike that took place earlier in Saudi Arabia targeted one of the largest oil refineries, a highly significant attack. This strike carries long-term consequences, such as driving up oil prices globally and signaling that Saudi Arabia may be considering military involvement. That means another country could soon be drawn into this growing conflict. Meanwhile, over in Cyprus, the situation is intensifying. The RAF base at Akrotiri experienced drone attacks today, which brings British military installations directly into the fray. In response, the Greeks have dispatched frigates and fighter jets to bolster protections for Cyprus and the British bases there. This sequence of events underlines a chilling sense of spread dynamism and danger in the region. As we've been reporting, Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of War, has stated that this won't become an endless war like Iraq. Yet, when considering Iraq, even in its early days, it was far from over and has left lasting consequences. So the risk of prolonged conflict remains very real. Emma, you mentioned Cyprus just now. How worried should we be about potential further strikes targeting UK interests in this region? Emma, it's no coincidence that just last night, Keir Starmer announced that the UK would permit American jets to operate from British bases for missions targeting Iran. Shortly after that announcement, we saw these drone attacks. The Prime Minister framed British actions as strictly defensive, safeguarding people and assets. However, the Iranians perceive it differently. When I spoke to Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister this morning, he was very clear. He said the UK Prime Minister is actively participating in aggression, even if wrapped in defensive language, and that this reality cannot be ignored. He also warned about the grave dangers of the UK aligning so closely with the United States, cautioning the British public against repeating the mistakes made during the 2003 Iraq invasion. There's a strong sense across the region that everyone must move with extreme caution. Right now, the Middle East is aflame, and containing this violence would be very challenging. The Iranians have expressed a willingness to engage in talks, but only if what they describe as American aggression ceases. They won't consider negotiations unless the bombing stops first. Thank you, Emma. Turning now to the political front, the Prime Minister faces pressure from all directions, including within his own party. Louisa James is standing by at Downing Street. Louisa, what's the government's current stance on this conflict? Louisa, the Prime Minister is navigating a complex and sensitive situation as tensions escalate. He is under intense scrutiny, both domestically and internationally. The government is emphasizing a commitment to protecting British interests, while seeking to avoid deeper military entanglement. However, with recent developments in the region and the involvement of allies, maintaining a delicate balance is proving increasingly difficult. Public opinion and party members alike are calling for clarity and cautious diplomacy to prevent further escalation. This unfolding crisis remains fluid, and all eyes are on how the UK government will respond as events continue to evolve. The Prime Minister is scheduled to give a statement to the House of Commons at 3:30 this afternoon, where he plans to outline the steps taken over the weekend. The atmosphere among MPs today is heavily focused on Iraq. West. One Labour MP remarked that the lessons of that war must always be remembered by any Labour MP or Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the leaders of the Liberal Democrats and the Greens are also urging Parliament to have a direct say on any future UK involvement in the region. The Prime Minister is expected to face intense questioning about the exact nature of the UK's role, especially regarding the reported use of British air bases by American forces. This marks something of a U-turn from his position last week, when he informed President Trump that such use of UK bases was not allowed. Government ministers and the Prime Minister, however, are making a clear distinction between what they describe as offensive strikes carried out by the US and Israel over the weekend and defensive operations that the UK claims are being conducted from its air bases to protect British lives. In the midst of this uncertainty about developments in the region, the question of how to protect potentially thousands of Britons there is pressing. The Foreign Secretary has revealed there are approximately 300,000 British nationals in the Middle East, in countries that Iran is reportedly targeting. Of these, about 100,000 have registered their presence with the foreign. This is a deeply worrying situation for many, and later in this program, we will hear from one of those affected firsthand. The Foreign Secretary, Ayat Cooper, has sent a message to those living abroad, urging them to shelter in place as a local advisory due to the risk of Iranian drone strikes and missile attacks remains in effect. For many, especially holidaymakers, this is an intensely stressful time, and there is a strong desire to return home safely. The government is working closely with airlines, the travel industry, and regional governments to facilitate safe travel. Various options are under consideration, though a large-scale evacuation, should it occur, would be among the largest of its kind in peacetime. On the international front, President Donald Trump has expressed his disappointment that Sajid Javid initially refused us access to British military bases for operations targeting Iran. The president also criticized the Prime Minister for taking too long to reverse that decision. Our correspondent Robert Moore is in Washington and reports that the frustration extends beyond just the president himself. Cabinet members, including, recently, Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of War, have also voiced their displeasure with Britain's stance. The Prime Minister is facing intense criticism, particularly from those he has described as traditional pearl-clutching allies. It's clear that the dynamics have shifted dramatically. Takir Starama, known as Number 10, has changed course and allowed us forces access to both RAF Fairfoot and Diego Garcia. Despite this, Donald Trump claimed this level of cooperation had never happened before, placing the Prime Minister in a difficult position. Naturally, critics are divided. Some argue he should have supported the U.S. from the outset, while others fear that Britain is now being pulled deeper into a conflict they would rather avoid. Turning our attention to the U.S. military situation, we've seen casualties already. Donald Trump has been pushing for regime change in Iran from day one. So, given everything that has unfolded in the past few days, where does the military strategy stand now? The consensus appears to be that there is a glaring lack of clear objectives or military clarity. President Trump has given mixed signals about how long this conflict might last, at times referring to it as a 2-day war, then a 4-day war, a 4-week war, or simply as long as it takes. Now, just minutes ago, Pentagon spokesman Pete Hegseth spoke at a briefing that's still ongoing. Earlier, he made a rather dramatic statement. The regime chanted death to America. And now it has been gifted death from America. He continued passionately. If you kill Americans, if you threaten Americans anywhere on earth, we will hunt you down without a... Crazy regimes like Iran, hell-bent on prophetic Islamist delusions, cannot have nuclear weapons. This is common sense. Many have said it, but it takes guts to actually enforce it. And our president has guts. Of course, opinions in America are far from unanimous. Congress has yet to authorize this conflict officially, but Pete Hegseth concluded firmly, saying, Iran started this war, and America will finish it. Thank you, Robert Moore, for that analysis. Meanwhile, global travel is in chaos, with thousands of flights canceled worldwide, leaving many passengers stranded. Major airports in Gulf Arab states, including Dubai, remain closed, and airspace restrictions over the region are in place. Holidaymakers find themselves stuck with little information on when flights might resume. Amy Welsh has the latest from Manchester Airport this lunchtime. Amy, what's the situation there? Well, the departure boards behind me continue to flash cancellation notices. But surprisingly, the disruption on the ground here at Manchester Airport is relatively minimal because most passengers were informed of their cancellations well before arriving at the airport. Today, all flights to the Middle East from Manchester have been cancelled. This includes flights to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, and Doha. Flights to India have also been cancelled. The 11:00 a.m. EasyJet flight to Cyprus was cancelled this morning as well, and EasyJet announced that all flights to and from Cyprus from both Manchester and London, Gatwick, have been suspended. Manchester airport officials say they are assessing the situation on a daily basis and advise passengers to contact their airline directly if they have any concerns about their upcoming flights. Attention travelers and those monitoring the situation. Today, a total of 16 outbound and 12 inbound flights at Manchester Airport have been cancelled, affecting approximately 10,000 passengers since Saturday. Meanwhile, at Heathrow, nearly half of the scheduled departures yesterday were cancelled, and this disruption is expected to persist today. Birmingham has also witnessed flight cancellations. Prominent airlines such as Qatar Airways have announced that flights will remain suspended until it is safe to reopen the airspace. We are anticipating updates from Etihad Airways at 2:00 p.m. and from Emirates at 3:00 p.m. It is crucial to emphasize, especially this lunchtime, that over 100,000 individuals may require evacuation from the Middle East in the coming days. The Foreign Office strongly advises travelers to regularly check their website for the latest information, as the situation continues to evolve rapidly. Thank you, Amy Welsh, for that report. These cancellations are having a significant impact on those currently stuck in the Gulf region. At present, more than 300,000 British citizens are in the Middle East, either on holiday, in transit, or residing there. One of those affected is Kira Durkin, who joins us now from what was supposed to be her holiday in Dubai. Kira, thank you for speaking with us. Can you tell us about your current situation? Hi, Nina. Well, right now we are essentially trapped in our hotel in Jumeirah Beach, a popular tourist destination in Dubai. We haven't received any updates from our airline regarding our flight status. The airspace remains closed, so we're in a holding pattern, waiting to see when and how we will be able to fly home. Furthermore, we are awaiting guidance on any movements we can make to leave the hotel safely, since the advice currently is to stay indoors. When did you first realize that the situation had dramatically changed? It was late on Saturday afternoon when we were by the pool. Suddenly, there was a massive explosion. People were immediately told to get inside. Everyone rushed from their sun loungers, and before we knew it, we were confined to our hotel rooms, listening to explosions nearby. The hotel windows were shaking. I was preparing a formula bottle for my 6-month-old baby when the table I was using started to vibrate. From that moment on, it became clear that the situation in the region had escalated significantly. It was an unsettling and frightening experience. Hey. Kira, how are you coping with all of this? You mentioned traveling with a young baby. Is this your first holiday abroad with him? Yes, it is our first overseas holiday with the baby. It's been tough because he has a severe milk protein allergy, so we had to bring special formula with us. I've packed a bit extra, but only enough to last until around Friday. So I'm increasingly anxious because if this situation continues beyond that, I will need to obtain his prescription milk from a UK doctor. The thought of running out of the specialized formula as we're stuck here is very worrying. I'm trying to stay calm, but it's difficult given everything happening around us. The little one we're traveling with is so young that getting milk into him is absolutely crucial at this stage. Right now, we're keeping him distracted, and honestly, he has no idea what's unfolding around him. But as the days tick by, there's this growing anxiety creeping in. We're starting to wonder, how will we manage if, by Friday, we still can't get hold of his special milk, the protein-free kind he needs? Let's just hope that situation doesn't arise. You mentioned earlier that you haven't received much information or support from your airline. How about the hotel? Are they stepping up to help you during this ordeal? Well, the hotel staff are doing everything within their power to assist us. They're sharing whatever information they have, which at the moment isn't much. They've assured us that we can stay as long as needed, and that the Dubai government is committed to supporting us as well. There's an additional layer of complexity with our passports. My fiancé and I traveled here on Irish passports, but our 6-month-old baby holds a British passport. This distinction has created some issues. We made sure to register our son's presence here, but it wasn't until today that I managed to get in touch with the Foreign Office to confirm that we're here as a family, and he isn't traveling solo. The authorities are currently piecing together a repatriation plan, just in case the airspace remains closed. Navigating the logistics of contacting the Irish embassy and understanding our options to depart, especially with a child holding a British passport while we travel on Irish ones, has been quite a challenge. Kira, wishing you strength as you face the uncertainty in the coming hours and days. Hopefully, you'll receive clear answers very soon. Thank you so much for joining us from Dubai and sharing your experience. Now, with our consumer editor, Chris Choi, we want to get a clearer picture of what passengers can do in this massive travel disruption that's affecting so many around the world. If your flight is cancelled, what rights do you actually have? As we've heard from Kira, and as countless others face similar challenges, rights don't always translate into what passengers receive. Wow. It's very common for airport and airline staff to be overwhelmed, leading to frustration. So let's break down exactly what passengers are entitled to. For those stranded abroad who book tickets with UK or EU airlines, passengers have the right to care and comfort. This includes alternative flights or a full refund, refreshments, accommodations in hotels proportional to the scale of disruption, and so on. However, if your airline isn't a UK or EU carrier, these rules might not apply. In that case, it's crucial to check the airline's own terms and conditions. For passengers already booked on flights departing from the UK that end up cancelled, the same rights apply: access to alternative flights, refreshments, hotel stays if necessary, and refunds if you decide not to travel at all. There's a lot to consider and a lot of support you can seek if you know your rights. Many travelers depend on their travel insurance, but there's no universal coverage to count on. It really comes down to carefully reading through the fine print and the terms and conditions. 2 key actions stand out. First, regularly check the Foreign Office website for the latest updates, as it provides current, reliable information. Second, stay connected with your airline. Keeping in close contact is crucial, because the situation is evolving rapidly, and staying informed can make all the difference.